It's the Cavaliers Basketball Club Podcast.
It's basketball time at the Cube.
It's over! It's over! The 52-year drought is over! The Cavaliers have won the NBA championship! Cleveland, this is for you!
Mitchell
goes to the basket and buries Cornette!
Garland high steps over the timeline, stumps on a dime, hits the three! Darius Garland has been unreal here in the fourth quarter. Shot clock down to 5. Lillard blocked by Mobley. Into Porzingis. Oh, challenge Allen, and Allen said no. Get that big stuff out of here.
The shoot-around.
Welcome back to the club. The Cavs just got cooked today in New York, 102-93. They're down 3-1 now in the series, and they're heading back home with a lot of questions to be answered. Can the guards remember how to shoot? Can the team play offense together? Is JB going to get creative or be out-schemed into unemployment? In a game where we statistically match them in all but rebounds and turnovers, how can we possibly look to a future where the Cavs can pull off 3 in a row?
Honestly, Adam, it isn't looking great. I know a lot of fans are pretty dejected right now. I can tell the players and coaches are feeling pretty frustrated as well, based on their post-game interviews. And we said they had to win this game. It was a make-or-break situation, and they floundered. And right now, I just hope they have enough self-respect for themselves to fight back, because they need to.
We are thrilled that you are listening to our podcast, especially now. And instead of an ad about who to bet on and why, we would like to invite you to subscribe to Apple Podcasts and Spotify to keep following our show. And if you're seeing this on YouTube, and we hope you are, please like and subscribe. We need money.
Obviously, Adam, this game was not great. And after the game, Donovan Mitchell solely put the loss on him. Do you agree with his mindset? Is it helpful? Is it frustrating? Do you care? How do you take him putting this loss on him?
I take it that he's the leader of the team. And looking at the statistics of the last 2 games, he deserves to take the blame. We put a lot on Garland for Game 3. That's because he had a great Game 2 and not so good of a Game 1. So when he's been the player that is kind of inconsistent, we're going to put the onus on him. But now, over the last 2 games, Mitchell not showing up has been the nail in the coffin. Mitchell in Game 3 was 9 for 19. He had 22 points, and tonight he was 5 for 18 and had 11 points. The Knicks have figured out a way to shut him down, and I have to credit them because I don't think it's just Donovan getting in his own head. Now, I think that he is, for some reason, falling short of the moment of playing against his hometown. And maybe that's it. Maybe the family and friends and all the people there is just getting to him for some reason. He's a human being, so I can imagine that some of the nerves are playing a part. But at this point, I would think that the frustration is a bigger role than the nerves. And that's what I saw tonight. I saw a guy that really never got it going and never really got the support from the coaching staff to find a rhythm. And by the fourth quarter, with him sitting on the bench until about 8 minutes left in the game, it just seemed like he wasn't going to have any answers tonight, and he didn't. So, yeah, I'm going to say that good on him for being the leader of the team, but like I mentioned when Garland had the pathetic game that he had in Game 3, as a superstar in this league and the leader of the organization, you can't do this. You can't have an 11-point game, especially when you could have been the difference tonight and we could have walked away with a W. So I think that the blame has been rightly put on him, but we have more to dish around.
Those are all great points. They're extremely valid, and I think the thing that I like about Mitchell is that he stepped up right away afterward and said that this loss, and really the last loss, was also on him in some capacity as well. He has not looked sharp in New York at all. I agree there could be some mental pressure there because he's from the area, but I also can just tell that the Knicks are putting physical pressure on him and not letting him be super comfortable in the game. That being said, this was a team loss. All of these losses have been a team loss in a big way, but you need your leader to put the onus on them, to put it on their shoulders, because it allows the rest of the team to understand the situation a little bit more. The last thing we would want from Mitchell to do is to go out there and be like, no, this was totally on Allen. He didn't rebound well enough or whatever, right? So we have seen stars do that in the past in other leagues and the NBA, James Harden. But I think that it is helpful that Mitchell also has a lot of trust in this locker room, and they're not pointing fingers at each other or, other people or outside distractions or anything like that. So the way that I take this comment, this mindset from Mitchell, is that he knows he needs to right the ship. I just hope he doesn't press the gas too much in this next game where he's trying to do everything. Let the game come to him, take over when he can, and utilize the talent around him to really let Cavaliers basketball shine.
Colin, I think we are all super frustrated right now. One thing that is apparent is that Tom Thibodeau is out coaching JB. So do you think if the Cavs lose Game 5, should Bickerstaff get fired?
I think that JB needs to be on the hot seat in the sense that the organization needs to have a discussion with him. I could see where the Cavs stick with him until mid-season, and then if things aren't improving in some capacity, that he gets fired mid-season next year. That might be too late. That might be for bad reasons. Whatever the case, that happens a lot in the NBA. We saw that with Ty Lue when the Cavs got rid of David Blatt, and Ty Lue did really well in that capacity. I think JB has done a really good job at utilizing some of this young talent, and he clearly gets along with these players and has a rapport, which from my understanding is really 98% of coaching in the NBA is if you get along with the players, then you're golden. So truly, really the way that I could see him getting canned is if the players kind of discreetly or not so discreetly go to Kobe Altman and say, we got outcoached, we need somebody else in here. And I could see that happening because, as the question states, Bickerstaff is not doing well from a coaching angle. He's not able to rely on players in a capacity that makes any sense in his rotations. The fact that, again, and Adam has heard me off air scream about this so many times, Ricky Rubio is not an option. Stop it. Stop doing that. Stop playing him. Because he's just not able to do anything. He got a ticky-tacky foul again in this game because his legs are not underneath him. He's not doing anything offensively that's breaking the defense down. He's just washed in this exact moment. So let him rest his legs and stop picking on him. And the rest of his rotations we've had questions about. So I think that he still might have a little bit of a leash left, but it could change mid-season next year.
Well, it's funny because Ricky Rubio saw 6 minutes, but those are 6 minutes that you just cannot abide. No, I understand, because really it shows that the methodology, the thinking of how to attack this team, there isn't one. He's grasping at straws by going after a guy like that that's hobbling off of a leg that's seen the same injury twice. And we're always worried about that with Ricky. If he's going to have a positive season, it's going to be next year. It's not going to be this year. So I agree with you. I think that he shouldn't be out there. Now, As far as the rest of the rotations and kind of what we saw from the game on and what Bickerstaff did, it's funny, the other games I was kind of looking at it going, okay, he's not managing the rest of the team very well. I need to see a different group of guys in there taking shots, playing defense, scrapping for the ball, and I need to just see a little more of the 1 through 12 that's on the team. Tonight, he played 9 guys, and 6 of them were in double figures. You've got the Knicks that, yeah, they had 4 guys in double figures, but that actually is the best that they've done. And, you know, out of some of the other games, they did a pretty good job holding the team from having a good outing. And looking at the stats, you know, the Cavs were 36 of 77, the Knicks were 38 of 84. Okay, we were 6 of 23 from 3, they were 8 of 29 from 3. Free throws, 15 of 19 for us, 18 of 28 for them. You know, going down the list, we had 24 assists, they had 15. I mean, it's not common to see these stats and see a game that you lost by 9 points. I would expect that we had maybe lost by 1, and it even could have gone into overtime. So I couldn't agree with you more. We're being outcoached, and I think that's the one thing that if I could get in a time machine and mention it in one of our previous episodes of what to worry about for this series, it would be Thibodeau. Tom Thibodeau is a great coach, and he's been there many times before. And he's proving that tonight and really in the series itself, that he can get the most out of the players that are on the roster. And right now, it doesn't seem that JB can get the most out of our team. So, obviously, it was a dud of a night for our star player. And when that happens and you only lose by 9 points, like I mentioned, that's also a little bit of a fluke. But when I'm watching, I noticed that with 8 minutes left, Mitchell's on the bench looking shell-shocked, not in there with the guys, not contributing to the game. And I thought to myself, well, when did Mitchell ever deserve to be sitting out right now? Garland deserved to be sitting in the first half. But Mitchell wasn't in foul trouble, and he wasn't in a situation where he needed to think on his play. You know, he's the leader of the team. This is his 6th year in the playoffs. I think that he needed to be out there for pretty much every minute of the fourth quarter to find his rhythm and to drive this team to a victory. And so that alone made me think, okay, maybe Mitchell will go to Altman and say, I don't know if I can win with this guy.
Yeah, I thought that Mitchell deserved to be rested a little bit more, but I agree with you. It probably went on a little bit too long. I do think that Mitchell was having some issues defensively, but again, you had Cedi Osman out there on the court with Mitchell at the same time. You know that Mitchell at times is our weakest defender in certain scenarios, but when you have Cedi on the floor, then you have 2 guys who can be picked on a little bit too much. And you still have Isaac Okoro, who exists. You still have Lamar, who exists. Even Dean Wade is a better defender than Cedi. And you were having issues, what you brought up earlier with the stats. You lost the offensive rebounding battle. And you have a 6'8", 6'9", power forward, small forward in Dean Wade, who didn't play 1 minute. Not 1 minute at all. You could have had 3 bigs out there and really said, we're shutting this down. We know the Knicks aren't fantastic shooters, but we're going to bring out a guy who is bigger than everybody else, and you tell him, go get the ball, along with all the effort that, you know, we see out of Mobley and Allen every night. So that's where I'm a little confused, because I agree. We both agree that Thibodeau is out coaching Bickerstaff, but he's doing it by showing his hand. I mean, he's playing poker and he's showing JB his hand and daring him to ante.
He's trying to win with the same hand every night.
Right. And that hand is rebounding. You have a guy in Dean Wade, you have a guy in Lamar Stevens, who are bigger players, who are bodies that you can put on these small forwards and guards to box them out. And I know I'm simplifying it,
It's okay to simplify it because it's just a game. It's the game of basketball. Yes, it can be difficult, but it's not rocket science or brain surgery. And at the end of the day, they're playing unimaginative. They're going out there with the same looks time and time again. And like you said, we have other people that have been consistent for us throughout the regular season, and they're not being utilized now. Mitchell is playing poor defensively. Well, yes, the playoffs are kind of when the refs allow defense to come back into the fold, but the NBA gave up on defense a long time ago. So if the team is going to get into a shooting match, I want Mitchell out there, not on the bench. Bickerstaff may be a better season coach than playoff coach. He may be more suited to winning in the regular season, and that could be the worst thing I could say about him. Something that you mentioned at the top of this that I wanted to comment on. I agree that it's very possible that he'll have that kind of a leash into the middle part of the season because he's got a longer contract still, and that doesn't mean anything though because the Cavs will hire you for 4 years and fire you immediately.
Nope,
like
not the Cavs.
Mike Brown.
I think I'm still paying Mike Brown for his sandwich.
Yeah, I did the other day when I paid for a ticket to the game.
Yeah.
But I see JB losing his job after this next game if they lose in the same fashion as these last two. Because how can they go into another season where they can feel so confident that they can play consistently in that 82 game window, but then still know they've got maybe an underperforming coach and Bickerstaff when it really counts, when the playoffs begin? They have to decide, is he capable of stepping up to the challenge of the playoffs and the difference between the two, right? The regular season and the playoffs. And this next game or the next series of games, if they do win the next one and can continue the series on, are going to be huge for the Cavs deciding whether or not he can do it or not. So,
Adam, the Knicks have out-rebounded the Cavs to a 3-1 lead. The series is giving us some idea of what the team will need to do in the offseason to shore up these issues. What moves would you make to improve this roster?
well, it's an interesting question because obviously the Cavs still have a lot of game left to play, and I do say game because it is one game at a time now from here on out. But it could go longer. We could see a best of 7 still fully materialize. Just as an exercise, I think it's an interesting concept here. What are we lacking, and why are we actually struggling to get out of the first round? You know, Ricky Rubio, I'm going to go right at him. I don't know if he can be a backup point guard to Darius Garland in the future. I think he's a good players coach. We always talk about that. Somebody that sits on the bench and can kind of be another coach down the row that can help these players identify what's important on the court. Rubio is not cutting it. We need a stronger point guard option to back up Darius, and I would almost look for the sixth man to come from that role. You know, we talked about in the past, if Sexton had stayed on this team, turning him into the sixth man. So I think we've always talked a little bit about the point guard coming off the bench, playing a larger role. Certain players on the team, there's a big question mark of what you do moving forward. Isaac Okoro, I know we still want to believe in the kid. He's 22 years old. This is his 4th season in the league. And that means he's getting a little long in the tooth as far as him just having NBA stats to count up. And I'm concerned that he's running out of time to be relevant on a team like this, because the Cavaliers now are firing on all cylinders to head to the finals in the next couple of years and try to win a ring before they've got to rethink this roster. And we saw in tonight's game that he missed some big shots in the corner, wide open. And that was when we had a lead. So I think Isaac, unfortunately, you know, I thought he was fine as a starting small forward option if you're not going to make him shoot the ball much and just kind of let him play tough defense. That's not the way that it's panned out. It seems like they really want a shooter to be in that role, and him coming off the bench just hasn't cut it. So I'm thinking that maybe they've got to look in another direction and trade him in the offseason, simply because they have a lot of redundancy on the team. I would rather see, as you mentioned, I'd rather see Lamar out there over Okoro at this point because he's got more size than Okoro does. The thing that's glared from the start of the season, the thing that we've worried about from number one, are a backup big to the two that we have starting. And I think that we had hoped that Isaiah Mobley would be brought along a little more. And instead he played with the charge throughout the year and didn't really see much time as a Cavalier. So Dean Wade, Isaiah Mobley, these guys, I expected to possibly use them in these situations, and now we don't have them. Isaiah, because we didn't bring him along, and Wade, I don't know why. It seemed like they wanted to use him a lot, but they just won't bring him in. So the big is a big question. No pun intended, because right now we're undersized a little bit by not having a third option, and our guys just need somebody to come off the bench to provide that spark to grab some boards. So
yeah, I think that those are all really solid points. I think that I would go with wing as the number one issue right now. You brought up Isaac. LeVert really isn't a wing per se. Jetty has always been up and down in his career, along with LeVert. They just don't have a consistent wing. Even I like Lamar as well, but Lamar is not a consistent outside shooter. I think that he's a good role player. They don't have a three that is somebody that the rest of the team seems to have a good ebb and flow with. I think they do sometimes with Isaac. I think they do sometimes with Jetty. I think they do sometimes with LeVert. Like, it's not consistent. And they just need some type of player who they can trust to hit an outside shot occasionally if that's what they want them to do, or put the ball on the floor and dribble some if that's what they want that person to do. And that's just missing right now. I don't know if they would trade Isaac. I think that something needs to be resolved with him where he is actually given some actual direction offensively more than what he's getting right now. And this goes back to our earlier question, which is I think the coaching staff and JB specifically his feet should be put to the fire here a little bit with how slow Isaac has been evolving. He was a top 5, I think he was a top 8 pick at least, and you knew that his offense wasn't super great. Well, if you want him to play solid offense, you probably should have brought him along a little bit quicker. And the only other, I agree with you about the backup big, but I'm actually kind of comfortable with Isaiah Mobley potentially doing some of that. And then the other guy I think is just a bit of a crapshoot of a player is Jetty. I think that Jetty, if they lose their next game, I could see Jetty being gone this offseason, because I don't think the coaching staff knows what to do with him at times. You and I have noted how we feel like they've treated him unfairly at times, because there were some seasons where Jetty was starting at point, and you're just going, what is going on? I mean, just out of necessity, they needed to do that.
Yeah, injuries a lot of the time.
Yeah, but I think I saw in this game that Jetty can't be trusted at times because he's not a guy who can hit an outside shot consistently. And even then, he just makes weird rotations at times and isn't always on the same page defensively. And he's probably the guy I would say they need to move away from. And they need to figure out more stuff with their bench, because if you move away from Jetty, then what are you going for? Are you going for, like what you mentioned, more of a sixth-man point guard, or a wing that's strictly 3-and-D, whatever the case may be. But those are the players that I would highlight.
The final seconds.
Folks on Twitter, again, are questioning the trade for Mitchell, believing that the Cavs' 20th ranked offense, led by Garland and the 3 bigs last year, is superior to this year's 9th ranked offense with Mitchell. So, are they right? Has the season been worse? Would the team actually be up 3-1 with Markkanen, Sexton, and Ochai?
Well, we like to provide comedy here on the podcast, especially now. It's a dark time if you're a fan of the Cavaliers, so we found this to be pretty humorous, and we wanted to share in the the joke. But no, obviously, this is kind of the reason why the internet doesn't always have utility, or that people having the ability to get on and talk about stuff doesn't always mean that they should. And I understand the irony here if I say something stupid. People are thinking that we would somehow be better without the player that took us to the playoffs this year. Donovan Mitchell has been in the playoffs 6 years in a row. He's led this team every step of the way. Yes, granted, it's the regular season, and there is some ease to the regular season compared to the playoffs. But we wouldn't even really be having this conversation. We would have been watching another play-in, possibly, and most likely a loss there. The idea that we would be a more fun or more engaging offense to watch without Mitchell is just ridiculous. I think that it's easy for people to dump on the low-hanging fruit, or to pick the low-hanging fruit, let's say, when disappointment sets in. And we, of course, have been disappointed as well. These last couple of games have been pretty hard to watch. But I have to remind myself, as I've said in other episodes prior, that this season was about experimentation and finding what works. And unfortunately, we've discovered pretty quickly that we don't have what works in the playoffs, most likely. So, oh well, fun season, but difficult to watch us lose to the Knicks in this way. That doesn't mean that Mitchell being gone or Mitchell never coming here would have been a better outcome. I think the things we've tackled in this episode are more appropriate. What players can be added to the team, or frankly, what coaching additions or subtractions might need to be made. But Donovan Mitchell is the only reason why we are in the playoffs again for the first time in 5 years.
The internet is what it is. The Twitterverse is frustrating at times. I think that it's kind of like what you said. When disappointment sets in, people tend to then write out stuff that you don't really need to write out. People can be really spiteful, or if they want to raise good points and have conversations, it's hard to do that because it's the internet, and you're especially using that horrible site in Twitter. And we use it for our podcast because we have to. It's frustrating. You have to remember what this team looked like last year and compare it to what it looks like right now. And if you honestly wanted to match up Markkanen, Sexton, and Ochai right now with the Cavs, on the Cavs against the Knicks, we still would probably be getting out-rebounded, because that was a huge issue that we had last year with Markkanen, is he would get out-rebounded regularly. It's why Kevin Love was brought in off the bench, is a guy who was also 7 foot, couldn't rebound well. So we would be even, I feel like, doubly irate, because it'd be like, we have 3 7-footers, we should never be out-rebounded. Sexton, I don't know if you remember this, Adam, but Sexton wasn't good at guarding people. So he would be getting cooked left and right by these Knicks players. I think that Sexton is a good guy. I think that he is a better player than I'm saying right now. But Brunson probably would be playing and toying with him all series. And Ochai is an unknown. So, yeah, okay, maybe he is that consistent shooter off the bench for us that we don't have, except we'd be down by 15 the whole game anyway. So, people just, it's frustrating for us when we, like you mentioned, have watched 80 games. We've watched over 160 some games of Cavs basketball these last 2 years, and I know that we're young pups compared to other podcasters who follow this team. And I just respect a lot of other folks' opinions who have written about the team, who have watched more games, who might just put a little more perspective on whether or not what's happening with this team. And I think ultimately the major disappointment for me that ties into this last statement, this last question, is really it's down to the coaching staff. Because the fact of the matter is there's no reason our offense should be less dynamic when you have a player like Donovan Mitchell. Who is that on? That's on the coaches to make sure that the offense gets more dynamic as opposed to less. So, coaching's got to improve.
Thank you for listening to the Cavaliers Basketball Club podcast. Let's go Cavs!